All right, let's do it. The discourse has died down. If I was a better YouTuber, I probably would have made this video weeks ago on the heels of the 2024 Game Awards when this topic was all over social media. But I want to take some time to kind of journal, take some notes, formulate my own opinion on the topic. So while the embers are cool, I'm going to share my take on female protagonists in gaming. And if I've planned this video out correctly, this should be a relatively succinct video. I have some notes in front of me that I'm going to be referencing and reading from as I get through my points. And I guess the first point right off the bat is the rise of female protagonists. It's clear as day that there's been a shift in lead characters in gaming. We've seen more and more games featuring female protagonists in prominent roles, sometimes even replacing long-established male leads. And this trend isn't exclusive to gaming either. It's even more apparent in the film industry, TV and movies, where we've seen similar shifts in character representation. And while I'm mainly going to be focusing on gaming, I wouldn't say that my channel is exactly like I'm a gaming channel, but it's mainly what I upload and it's what I care about and it's what I kind of know the most about. But I do think it's important to point out that executives and creatives, it would realistically make sense that they would look at sales data to guide their decisions on what kind of projects they're going to fund or pursue. But I also think that there are cases where social media and cultural shifts influence decisions about who the main character of a particular project is going to be. And I think that if one entertainment field, like let's say TV or movies, find that a female lead is successful, maybe we might see that in other forms of entertainment like gaming, where it has an impact there as well. Point two is about demographics and audience expectations. I think that generally speaking, there is a traditional attitude that male audiences tend to gravitate toward power fantasies, action combat, or I guess it's fair to say action, combat, and competition-driven games. Meanwhile, it seems as though female demographic is often seen as, I guess, more inclined towards lower stakes games, narrative-driven adventures, simulation, or even just casual social games. Audiences are diverse across the board, but I think it's still an interesting way that when we're seeing new games come out or announced, that it could, again, have an impact on what the shift could look like and who the protagonist is going to be. And then my point three is about cultural trends and game development. I think another big factor about that is to consider how culture changes over time. When a game begins development, what might be culturally or societally expected from a man or a woman or a child or a teenager in storytelling, it could be completely outdated by the time the game is actually released. And depending on the game studio we might be, the game studios that are out there, gamers I think are sometimes painfully aware of how long development cycles can be when a studio really puts their nose to the grindstone. So by the time a game, like I said, hits the digital shelves, as it were, the cultural landscape could be completely different from when the story in the game was conceptualized, or in pre-production, I think is what it's called. So section or point four is about background and displacement. And this point in particular was the one that I think was like the backbone for me wanting to talk about this at all, was because, we all see the points online about the political or the woke or the DEI agendas and stuff like that, but it kind of made me wonder at a bit more foundational of a level, what's going on there? Like, what do people really not like? And I think so far I've covered what is happening with the rise of, female protagonists, a little bit of the thoughts around what's happening, and then the environment, like gaming and the culture in this society. So the environment this topic is happening in. Now, I think that there's an important point about the emotional impact on audiences when a space they feel belongs to them is usurped by another group. So, for some male gamers, in my opinion, obviously, the rise of female protagonists can feel like an erasure of their emotional and financial investment in certain franchises. They may feel displaced and respond with backlash. This is a big part, I think, of the conversation surrounding woke culture in gaming. In a lot of the psychology, sociology related, videos and articles that I've read about, a common thing that gets brought up is that our brains are designed to identify patterns. So if we've experienced this type of supplanting somewhere else, like in the film industry, where there might be a movie or a TV show that used to feature like a man or a male character, and now it features a woman character, maybe just because, or because they want to bring in a different audience, an audience. But if we've seen that behavior, if we recognize this behavior somewhere else, we start to see it in other places, and that becomes easier. And if we have a negative reaction to it somewhere else, like your favorite show or movie, replacing your favorite male character with a female character, then that negative reaction in one place, the consistency tells me that we're going to see that negative reaction anywhere or anytime we encounter this behavior. So if you see it in movies and TV shows, and then you see it in gaming, you're going to draw the correlation that that's happening. So point 5, the characters caught in the crossfire. So I mentioned that point 4 about displacement, erasure, someone supplanting your environment, which I could delve more into in another video or another time. I think section 5 that I have here is also what I wanted to talk about, and it should feature the thumbnail characters, which are, the characters I think that are caught in the crossfire of the whole woke DEI point. Atsu from Ghosts of Yotei and Ciri from The Witcher 4. And I guess I'll start with Atsu first. There's not a lot of information on her yet, which makes her character easier to speculate. Looking at Ghost of Tsushima, and I want to say briefly about Ghost of Tsushima that, I got all the trophies, I really enjoyed the game, I played it twice, that kind of thing. It was really, I had a whole lot of theories of where I thought the game could go if they would ever do a sequel, but focusing mainly on just kind of like briefly the narrative, I'm going to dance around spoilers a little bit with Ghost of Tsushima. But we know that by the end of Jin Sakai's journey through that game, some of the people don't even know, who the ghost really is. They've only really heard stories, which is, it's not exactly inconsistent writing, but there are characters in the beginning of the story that watch him become the ghost, and they know who he is. But then by the end of the entire conflict with the Mongols, again, he's really just more of like this legend. So that leaves room for Atsu to be a part of that legend of the ghost. The little bit that we do know about Ghost of Yotei is that it takes place 300 years after Jin's story. Briefly, one of the ideas that I remember theorizing in the event there was a sequel to the Ghost of Tsushima was that, like, maybe the ghost was like this superstition or Japanese spirit that, was told like a frightening tale to the people of Japan. That way they would like keep them in line. And without delving too much into the whole theory aspect of it, there's a lot of storytelling potential there, especially if Sucker Punch decides to make her character, Atsu's character, very different from Jin, which I think would be a good idea. If they were just like, what bound them together was the fact they were both the ghost and not really where they came from or their upbringing or anything like that. So generally speaking, I would say the greater the contrast between the two characters, Jin and Atsu, the more compelling the continuation of the ghost legend could be. So I was really excited for that. Moving to Ciri from Witcher 4. And Ciri is an interesting one because, again, when I was making this video and deciding how I was going to structure talking about this, I was, of course, on social media. I was watching other videos of people talking about whether or not Ciri could be a Witcher and stuff like that. I'm not here to give a dissertation on how Ciri can be a Witcher or what it's like in the books versus, the show or the games and things like that. I'm really kind of only going to be referencing what I know of her context in Witcher 3, right? And when the player controls Ciri, because she's not a Witcher herself, her combat style and her abilities, they're pretty different than Geralt's. In the main campaign and the DLC setup, the idea that Geralt's story has been told, but the world would always need a Witcher. And, I think at least that's how I perceived it. When especially, again, I'm going to dance around some spoiler stuff, but by the end of those games, it kind of feels like, like the book has been closed on Geralt, but, obviously these companies want to still make money with, this franchise. So what would we see next? And I initially thought, and maybe I missed something with the trailer, but I initially thought that I read something about the next Witcher game featuring someone from the School of the Lynx. And I was thinking, okay, that'd be great. It's going to be a new character we haven't seen anything about. Although I still kind of thought, especially after finishing Witcher 3, that it would be cool if if the next game did feature Ciri. But, focusing, specifically on Ciri, yeah, she's not a traditional Witcher in I guess the context of Witcher 3. But her past, living, training with Geralt, living with the other Witchers at Kaer Morhen, and the fact that she didn't go through some of the rituals that require you to be a Witcher, it may open up some innovative gameplay from CD Projekt Red we may not have been able to see because of the structure of focusing only on Geralt for, 3 games. So the big, elephant in the room, the woke agenda, right? Is there a woke agenda? I guess with the way that term, like woke, DEI, I would say yes. I think that there is, in my opinion, I think yes, there's definitely instances where creatives push for women to be leads, not just to appeal to a particular demographic, like, hey, let's get more women in here, but because of the stories they want to tell. I don't think that this is as malicious or manipulative as some critics claim, but I do think that, harkening back to an earlier point, I think that if someone really wants to push a woman front and center for a particular game that's kind of usually focused around a male audience, it can feel, again, like that displacement's happening and feel like you're not being heard. It can feel as though someone's trying to shove this particular narrative or idealism down your throat. So there's that too. But like I said, I think it's about the vision of the person and the creative people and what they're trying to express. They have a particular worldview based on how they've lived on this earth, and that's going to influence their decisions. So like I said, I don't necessarily think it's as malicious, but I think that it can feel that way, or maybe there are probably examples out there where it does sound malicious and I'm just not aware of it. My point, point 7, section 7, is about the development cycles and the changing culture. I wanted to kind of reinforce that a bit. So I touched on cultural trends a bit earlier, but, and I was dancing around this, but I guess I'll say it now, which is, we all know that unless you're a company like maybe Ubisoft or Activision or EA, putting out a brand new game every year, development cycles are going to be long. Ghost of Tsushima, as an example, was in development for 5 years, I think from 2015 to 2020. And The Witcher 3 was around, I think I read something like 3.5 years from what I could find. I think it was like, maybe it came out 2015, so maybe like 2011-ish, 2012. So studios aren't isolated from the rest of the world, right? It's not like there's no windows and doors and no one ever leaves the building. I think while a game may have a direction from the beginning, right, that vision, that creative vision, that direction could still be influenced by culture, society, the executives, that want this game to be financially successful as well. I know I used the expression earlier, elephant in the room. I think the other one that I just can't help but think about, because I'm also part of this, this happening, which was Last of Us Part 2. I think the game was incredibly successful from almost every metric, but it remains, to this day, one of the most polarizing titles in PlayStation's library. The success of the game, a lot of people can tell you how successful the game was, but the reception, especially regarding its narrative choices, it sparked a heated debate. And this just goes to show how sensitive, obviously, the topic of character representation can be. It's not enough just to say it doesn't matter if the main character is a woman as long as the game is good. That's a point that I've heard a lot, and I've probably even said that point myself. Like, oh, it doesn't matter as long as the gameplay is good, as long as the story makes sense, like, it'll all work out. No, I think sometimes it absolutely matters, and hopefully these are good examples, but I have 2 examples I kind of wanted to share about this. One example was God of War 2018 and Ragnarok. If from God of War 2018 to Ragnarok, if like between the stories, right, suddenly you switched from focusing and playing as Kratos and Atreus to Freya and Atreus, obviously instead of Kratos, like, and let's just say Kratos died off screen, and now you're playing as Freya and Atreus, I think fans might feel disconnected. I think that even if the gameplay and story were like spectacular, the narrative needs to fit the character, and sometimes the identity of that character is absolutely crucial to the story's impact. The other example that I had in a game that I really liked of Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. And one of the main themes of that game is the relationship between mother and daughter. I think that if Aloy had been a male character, that theme would have felt completely different. And I think the emotional weight, especially for people who finished the game, I think the emotional weight would have been lost. So gamers are looking for a connection to the characters they control. characters who are strong, flawed, and capable of like these fantastical, extraordinary feats that we couldn't do in our wildest imaginations, right? That's part of the escapism. When that connection doesn't happen, I think that that's part of where the backlash stems from. So the big question is, do people actually hate female protagonists? I would say no. I just wanted to have a spicy title. I've never done it. I've never had the spicy title where you click on it and it's like, what in the world? And then it's completely ends up being something different. I've never done that. So I thought it'd be fun to do at least once. There's way more I could say on this topic, but like I said, ultimately, when you just drop a female protagonist into a traditionally male-dominated environment without understanding how it impacts the story or the audience, I think it will backfire. I think it will backfire. Instead of celebrating the hard work of everyone involved, it can devolve into online arguments and frustration, adversely affecting the game. What's important at the end of the day is making sure that the story feels authentic to the world being created and that the creators respect the intelligence and investment of the people they want to enjoy what they built. And while it's not a video game, I thought I'd quickly mention, because I'm recording this well after I've watched Arcane Season 2, I think Arcane Season 2, to me, is like a perfect example of exactly what I just said. I think it's people that respect the intelligence and the investment of the people who've maybe even played League of Legends, maybe watched the first season, or the kind of audience they hope will gravitate to this particular project. But yeah, that's it. That's mainly what I had to say. I think I got through all my bulleted points. Is the rise of female protagonists in gaming a natural progression, or are we seeing forced representation? I mean, obviously, I'm not going to try to change any minds with this video. I doubt I'm actually going to explore this subject in future opinion pieces like this. But hey, never say never. If like some of these games I've been seeing, Fable, Intergalactic, Witcher 4, Ghost of Yotei, and whatever else is featuring a female lead, if all that fails, then I guess developers and publishers should have heeded that negativity. And I may pop back up to give my take, but I might not, because who knows when I ever stream and who knows when I'll ever make a video. Only time will tell. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, again, whenever that may be. Peace.